Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
All right, guys, welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101, as always, presented by our friends over at ScentLock. They have been good friends of mine for a long time, good friends of Bear Archery, and they just make phenomenal gear. So go check out my friends over at ScentLock. I have a special guest on. I'm pleased to have him on. I don't want to say I'm surprised to have him on. I'll get there in a minute. I'm pleased to have him on, Mr. Allen Bolen. Allen, how are you, man?
Fantastic. Dylan, how you doing?
Man, better than I deserve. I know that.
Yeah, right on.
You coming back to Kansas this year for whitetails?
Yeah, I will be.
Now,
Yeah.
What area were you hunting in? Like what part of the state?
It'd be considered Western Kansas, but barely.
Okay.
Kind of central Western Kansas. Yeah.
I got you. No, I asked because, it's that time of year where I'm getting giddy, going out and checking trail cameras and taking inventory. And so, that's what I'm passionate about is whitetail.
Yeah.
So now,
Well, I can definitely see why, man.
yeah,
I live in Utah and I hunt a lot in Alaska and northern Canada. And for some reason, the whitetails, like my whitetail hunt every year, it's the one that I kind of like go to bed thinking about at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, thinking about these giant whitetail bucks I got showing up on my cameras. And there's just something about that animal. I just can't get over it.
and it's a complete different hunt. I mean, if you're hunting out west, spot and stalk, it's a totally different hunt. I mean, they're not even a comparison. And I always tell people a great way to look at it is when you're whitetail hunting, your success comes from your scouting. Now, obviously that is true for out west too, but you hang a tree stand and that's where you're going to hunt from. And so if you have scouted bad and you hang a tree stand in the bad spot, you're not going to be successful. And so I like whitetail hunting because it's a chess match before season ever even opens. The chess match begins right now.
Yeah.
And so there's months of scouting leading up to the final game, if you want to say it that way.
Yeah, I've already driven out to Kansas as an example, setting cameras, looking at new spots, all of that. For me though, I got to say that I'm a fan of certain animals and the way they act and the way they look, and not so much the hunt. Let me say this, like as an example, I think elk are really fun to hunt. I love the actual hunt. I think they're one of the most fun animals to hunt, but I don't appreciate the trophy. They all look the same to me. I see a 356 point and a 386 point and I'm like, they look almost the same. Like neither one of them does anything for me. But a whitetail or a mule deer, the antler configuration, all the original, oh, look at the G2s on that guy, or oh my gosh, those hook G1s, or I just go nuts over the trophy. And so even though tree stand hunting whitetail honestly isn't as much fun to me as calling in a bull elk, I appreciate the trophy so much more. I'm way more drawn to it. And I think they're smarter, they're more wary, all of that. So I feel like the challenge is a level higher too. Not only do I just like the look of the animal better, but so there's more to me that goes into it than just simply like the method of hunting.
Yeah, no. And it's funny you say that because when I first, I got to go to Pope and Young panel and, we're talking to guys who measure everything, from A to Z. And we were doing some interviews for some videos and I asked them, well, what's the most difficult animal to measure? And they were like whitetails by far. And they're like, they're just so diverse, I mean, you'll never have two antlers the same. It's always different. It's always something, it's never just, oh, here's a whitetail. And so that was interesting to me, that they said that. And then of course you see deer like, the butcher buck and, it took two teams 8 hours a piece to measure that thing.
Yeah.
And, just crazy, man.
Yeah. That buck was a mess.
Yeah.
A hot mess. But beautiful.
Before we dive in, give us a quick introduction to yourself, man.
Sure. Yeah. I live in the state of Utah. I wasn't born here, but I've lived here for about 20 years. I don't hunt all that much in Utah. I do a little bit of mule deer hunting. The last 5 years, I've really concentrated on mule deer here, but generally I like to hunt, in all the surrounding states. I try to find very good tags. I hunt a lot in Alaska, um, the Yukon, British Columbia. I've been through a lot of the northern provinces hunting caribou as well. I love the North Country. I try to get there at least a month a year. I just got back from the Yukon um, on a Dall sheep caribou hunt like a week ago, and I have another Yukon hunt planned at the end of October, actually. But yeah, I enjoy backpack hunting. I enjoy backcountry hunting. I enjoy I don't know. I really try to soak in each species that I hunt and harvest as big of possible of a representation of that species. And I just said the word harvest. I actually hate that word, by the way. It's just an old habit. I like to kill the biggest possible of that species. Let me correct myself because we're not farmers, we're hunters. We actually kill things. So anyway, yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm an archery fanatic too. I love shooting my bow. I love the equipment. I really dive into tuning and long distance shooting. I shoot every day. I tune all of my own stuff. I'm fanatical about it. Every arrow is shooting a bullet hole at 5 yards, or I won't touch it. I'm big into like different. I try to dive deep into maximizing my setup, and I don't always do it in a way that you might read about in a magazine article. I find new and interesting ways to do stuff. I'm always experimenting.
No, that's one of the many things that I appreciate about your social media is because, and a perfect example is not too long ago, you put out a video about draw length. And I'm like, yeah, like people so often, measure wingspan divided by 2.5, and that's what they set their bow to. And they never experiment. Where do I shoot the best at? Where do I get the best extension at? Where is my alignment the best at? They just do it. And so I respected that about you. Now, the reason I say that I'm shocked that not shocked, but I'm surprised you almost came on is because you are the host of Hoyt's podcast,
Right.
which I respect. I love that you don't care. This is a bear archery podcast, and you get some guys and like, what? I've had guys tell me like, I don't shoot a bear, and I'm like, I don't care. You're still a successful hunter that I would love to get some advice from and love to hear from, and I know my listeners would as well. And so, that's what I truly respected that you were willing and able to come on with me.
Well, honestly, I was the one that was surprised and pleased that you guys would allow me on. Because so what, I shoot a Hoyt, it's archery, and I'm glad that you guys weren't closed-minded to that in having me on, because I'm sure, there's let's talk about bow hunting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This podcast for me has always been a place where I want to teach and inspire people. And, I'm a fan of bear archery. I shoot their recurves. I shoot their crossbow or their compounds. But at the end of the day, I don't care what you shoot. I just want you to get out and go hunting. And I want you to learn and expand and grow as a hunter, which I'm curious to know. How did you get to the place you're at in your hunting career?
Well, and I don't know, how do you define the place I'm at? I don't know. I guess I've killed a handful of really big animals. I'm not a quantity guy. I'm a quality guy when it comes to putting an arrow through something. I'm extremely picky. I'm tenaciously picky. If I had to give myself one quality that is sort of unique, is that if I get something in my head that I want, I will not stop. I will not compromise. I will not, as a perfect example, I've been on 6 Dall sheep hunts. I've, spent 66 days hunting Dall sheep, and I've seen, I'm counting about 24 legal rams, 24 legal rams that I could have stalked, and I haven't made a single stalk yet because I'm after an absolute cranker giant, and I know what I want, and like shooting Shooting one that's not that isn't going to make me happy. And so I'm just not going to do it. And I'm not saying by any means that somebody is wrong for going and shooting something less than what they ultimately wanted. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying for me personally, it's just how I've chosen to do things. And so what that's led to is I've killed some really big animals. I think I have more different species in the top 10 Pope and Young than any other hunter. And that wasn't, I wasn't really trying for that. It just happened because what I do is I pick a species and I say, I'm going to hunt this species until I kill a monster. And I'm going to be fanatical about it. I'm going to learn everything I possibly can. I'm going to learn all the areas. If I need an outfitter, like on Doll Sheep, for example, I'm going to learn all the different outfitters, all the pro. I'm going to, and it's not just the physical part of it. It's also the mental part of it. It's the strategy. It's everything else. I just become obsessed with it until I get it done. And then I move to another species. And of course, I'll have 3 or 4 going at once. But I guess that's kind of a unique quality in the way I approach it. And some people might find that boring. I probably only kill on 30% of the hunts I go on. Some people might say, well, why on earth would you ever do that, spend that time and money and not shoot something? And it's not that, I don't mean to be like a snob or anything like that. I really don't want to come across that way. It wouldn't like make me happy to shoot like this, nice average animal I see. A lot of them are pretty dang nice. It just wouldn't be, I'm not saying, okay, I got to back up, because I would be happy if I shot it. Because there have been a lot of times where I thought something was really big and it wasn't quite as big as I thought. That I'm stoked out of my mind, because that was like part of the journey, and shooting that animal was incredibly fun and exciting and all of that. So I don't mean I'm unhappy when I shoot something small. If I knowingly shoot something that's under what I'm ultimately after, it doesn't completely fulfill me. So if there's still a chance, if there's still 2 hours of light left on the last day, and there's still a chance that I might see that monster, I don't want to give up that chance.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, absolutely, man. And that's what, I can't stress this enough, that hunting is different for everybody, and the experience that you're seeking is different for everybody. Some guys, want to go out and shoot a deer on opening day, and that's fine if that's
great.
how you want to do it.
Yep, that's right.
And then you've got your Allen Bolens who are literally looking for a new world record, and that's their goal, and that's great too. Me personally.
Hey, just to clarify though, I'm not looking for world records.
Now,
I'm just so you know, my exact goal is I'm looking for booners.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Your goal and your mission in life is to kill all 29 Pope and Young Boone and Crockett's. Am I correct?
No, I wouldn't say that, because I don't think that's possible. Just having looked through all the numbers, I think it's actually impossible to do. But I want to die with as many as I can. Let's say it's 15. That would be amazing.
Now, why do you think it's impossible? Just time.
There's just certain animals that the entry requirements and the percentage of animals killed in that class is so incredibly low. Like polar bear, if you add up like polar bear, black bear, grizzly brown bear, stone sheep, doll sheep, all of those, and then you get into the animals where it is possible, but you need a couple $100,000 for the tag. Like a bighorn sheep, you can kill a booner with $200,000. I'm not a rich guy. I'm a guy who makes decent money and spends every cent of it on hunting. And so I don't have that kind of money. Now, could I save up for 10 years? Maybe, but the problem is it keeps outpacing me. So, 10 years ago, a Boone and Crockett bighorn sheep was like $70,000, and I could have saved up $70,000, but which $70,000 was more 10 years ago, but still they're outpacing inflation and they're outpacing my earnings and all of that stuff. So there are some animals you can't buy that are incredibly hard, like the ones I've listed, and more as well. And then there's other animals that are doable, but would take an insane amount of money. So I don't know that it's possible. But I love doing it, man. I freaking love it. I love shooting a booner with my bow. I call them Pope and Young booners. I just love it. And so I have 8 right now, and it's pretty cool.
God, that's phenomenal, man. Now, how far are you away from the 29 with a bow?
I have no idea. Honestly, I've never even counted the species.
Really?
I swear on my life, I've never counted it up.
Because
it's not even my goal. I don't care. I have no desire to go shoot 29 dinks. No offense. Yeah. No offense to anybody out there. I have no desire to go shoot 29 Yeah. I'd rather shoot 15 monsters from 15 different species and miss out on the other 14 species, but have 15 monsters.
And it goes right back to your quality versus quantity statement.
Yeah.
Why care about the grand total when you're worried about the big ones, And that's and again, different strokes for different folks, Chuck Adams is on his way to 300. And good for him. I mean, that's
awesome.
That's a lifetime accomplishment that obviously nobody has ever done.
Chuck has killed some monsters, bro.
Yes, he has.
Oh man, that man is the Michael Jordan of bow hunting.
Now, don't let me misquote it. Let me just pull it up here. You might have seen it. One of his reports from Alaska right now said he shot his biggest black.
Yeah, I think I used to have the blacktail velvet world record.
So you think he just broke it?
Well, I mean, blacktail do have a lot of deductions. Well, what I mean by that is deductions make a big difference in blacktail. Like a 1-inch deduction on a whitetail isn't that much because let's say it's a 170-inch animal, but on a 108-inch animal, deductions make a big difference. And it has to dry and everything else. But if it really is a typical 5x5 that scores 114, there is a very high likelihood that it'll beat my world record, and that's great. I mean, who better to hand a world record over to than the great Chuck Adams?
Yeah. Yeah, he is he's a class act, man. And we had him on not too long ago on the Pope and Young podcast, and he started talking about how he started talking about how Frank Noska came up to him one time and said, "Hey, I think I've got you, Chuck." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you've only got 137, and I've got 158 in the books." And Chuck went home and entered. He's like, "Well, I haven't entered anything in 5 years." And so he went home and entered a bunch of animals and called Frank. He's like, "Well, I'm up to 203 now, so you don't have me."
That's great.
Again, different strokes for different folks, man. But no, I'm anxious to. Before I ask you this next question, I do need to give a quick thank you to my friends over at Minus 33. I know you're a huge fan of merino wool, and so no matter what merino wool,
I've worn Minus 33 before.
I love it, man.
Yeah, they're heavyweight stuff. I have a thick black heavyweight Minus 33. That thing is warm.
Yes, it is. I stumbled on them on accident. I needed some merino. I was headed out to Idaho on a hunt, and I needed some merino, and backcountry.com had it on sale, and I ordered it, and I'm like, good Lord, this is some of the finest I've ever had. Now, any merino though, give me your merino layering tips.
Well, the reason I like merino is because it's antimicrobial, and that fights odor. So sweat doesn't stink. Bacteria stinks. So when you use something that's antibacterial, it never allows that stinky bacteria to grow. So when I go on a 2-week sheep hunt, I'll bring one merino base layer and wear it the entire time, and it honestly never stinks. I mean, a little bit, but nothing compared to what a synthetic would do in that same amount of time. And they have synthetics that are infused with this antimicrobial stuff. I have never had as good of a result with that stuff as I have with a merino directly on the skin. So that's why I like it. Now, as far as wearing a lot of layers of merino, I don't do that because the disadvantage is this. I mean, the advantage of synthetic is that it dries faster. So what I love wearing is merino on my skin, and then I wear synthetics above that. Personally, that's my approach.
Very good. Guys, I would just encourage you, if you've never see, Alan, I don't know, growing up in the Midwest and in the South even, base layers didn't get much attention because it doesn't get very cold. And so I never really put much thought into Merino until I started traveling out west. But now Merino even plays a huge role in my whitetail system. So guys, if you've never checked out Merino wool, there's tons of benefits to it. And so
Yeah, and so also I will say, Dylan, I'll take one thing back. When I was talking about wearing additional layers of wool, I was talking about backpack hunting.
yeah.
Now, if I'm like, I've worn my -33 in my whitetail stand many times. That the thick, heavyweight layer I have, because in that case, you're just wanting scent free all the way through, and you're not concerned about whether or not it dries fast because you got a dryer back at the house.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in a backpack situation, I just wear that thin base layer. Anyway.
Speaking of drying, I don't know if it was my first experience with Allen Bolen or not, but you talked about drying your socks and your pant legs at night.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a phenomenal tip.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty well known in the backpacking world that if you keep on something that's wet, if you wear it overnight, it's going to be dry the next morning. So like if you have wet socks, now you don't want them sopping, dripping wet because that's going to get your sleeping bag wet. But let's say, you've wrung them out as much as you can. You got them pretty like drip free. You can put those socks back on, and then in the morning, those socks are going to be dry. Same thing with a shirt. Like I'll go to bed with my Merino base layer and it'll be damp from a rainstorm or sweat or whatever. And after a few hours of sleeping, it'll be dry. But sometimes it's like, it feels really disgusting wearing these wet socks to bed. Like,
Yeah.
I want to put a nice pair of dry socks on. Socks are kind of the only thing I carry a backup of. I mean, my underwear briefs and my socks are the only thing I carry two of when I'm backpacking, so I can rotate a bit. But so I'll put on my dry socks, and then what I started doing is putting my wet socks in right at my quad muscles on my legs, like the upper part of your legs. You stick the wet socks down your long johns, and you put them up against your skin, and they just sit there all night, and you wake up and they're dry, and you don't even feel that gross wetness up. For some reason, it doesn't bother you at all at that. You're putting them right there. I did them for a while up my shirt, and I didn't like that as much, and I started putting them in my legs. I'm like, hey, this works really well because they feel really gross on my feet.
Now, you mentioned having shot animals in the past that you thought were bigger and weren't what you were looking for. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a bear this spring or last spring where that was the case?
Yeah. So I went on my second brown bear hunt this spring, which I guess is my second hunt dedicated to brown bear. I've had a brown bear tag in my pocket on 3 different Dall sheep hunts as well. So I guess in a way it was kind of a 5th brown bear hunt. But it was my second Kodiak Island brown bear hunt. On the first one, I passed multiple big bears. One that my business partner was along. We were doing a 2-on-1, and I passed it. He shot it, and it scored 27 and 15/16.
Oh.
He was 1/16 off of Boone and Crockett. So I made a good call not shooting that bear by 1/16 of an inch. Anyway, yeah, just one of those things, right? So I didn't shoot. And see, in Alaska, the big thing on the brown bear is you have a 4-year waiting period. If you kill a brown bear in their coastal areas, you have to wait 4 years before you can shoot another one. So, but you can get a tag every year. You just can't kill. So, COVID happens. I had to skip that year. That was 2018 that we hunted, or 19, and then I skipped 20, and then 2021 I went again, and we hunted hard. We had a 15-day hunt, and we hunted hard. I think I shot my bear on day 10, and we saw 2 different bears during the first 10 days that we think were book bears, and one of them we ended up, like, we got really close to. We came over. He was moving down this trail, and we angled in on this trail, and we were going to intercept him on this trail. It was working out perfect, and we put 2 guys back as a lookout, and they signaled that he bedded. So just as we were arriving at this trail, he bedded behind this little sort of knoll, and so we went and peeked over this ridge. It's hard calling it a ridge, but it's just like a little knoll, and not a tree, right? Just like where we were is just grass. And when we peeked over we knew this big bear was bedded behind. And it was an absolute, I got to say, a mega bear. This was a mega bear. Lance Kronberger, who is probably the most experienced brown bear guide in the world. He said that he and his guides see a bear like this once every 3 or 4 years. I mean, it was a giant, a freaking giant. And that I don't know, maybe that was in us a little bit. We were a little bit too ramped up, but we peeked over this ridge, and I mean, it was just like our heads. That's it. But just the way the bear happened to bed, he was bedding facing right at his eyes, right at that spot on the ridge, and the sun was right in our faces. And so when we peeked our foreheads over, boom, he immediately spotted us. And that bear was, I mean, he had been hunted before. He knew exactly what was up, and he was out of there. And he was at 66 yards right there. So had he been bedded with his head down, looking forward or whatever, we'd have been his peripheral vision. He never would have noticed us. And I probably would have been able to dart him right there. But unfortunately, he was looking right at us, and we missed out on that bear. And that was a real heartbreaker. But then, so that was, I don't know, day 7 maybe. Day 10, it rains pours buckets all day. And we had to set up a glassing shelter. We were getting soaked. I mean, brown bear hunting, for those who don't know, is basically 12-hour days of intense boredom, followed by 2 or 3 minutes of the most exciting adrenaline rush you've ever had in your life. So it's a pretty boring hunt, though, other than, that final stalk and shot are incomparable to anything else. But the whole hunt is pretty boring and miserable. Freezing cold, wet, sitting on a knob, glassing 12 hours a day. But anyway, so we spotted this bear moving down this valley kind of toward us, and he looked big. So we took off running. We got in front of him. It's really foggy and rainy. We can't see that well. He's coming at us. He looks big. And Lance did say, he's like, I don't know, man. Something about him tells me he might not be the age class we're looking for. And so we kind of backed off, and we weren't going to kill him. And then he flashed white claws when he was walking. So white claws on a Kodiak brown bear means that he's been on the beach for decade plus. I mean, just like really spending a lot of his life on the beach, and their claws go ivory white. And so anytime you see white claws, you're looking at like a 16, 17-year-old bear. And if that's the case, and it's a boar, he is a shooter. He's probably a book bear. And so we said, oh, white claws. And I said, hey, Lance, if it's white claws, this is what we've been waiting for. Let's do it. And so we maneuver, we get in front of this bear. We think he's going to come down one of these 2 trails. And so we position right in between these 2 trails. And so we're watching these trails, and I catch some branches, some alders, the tops of them swinging out of the corner of my eye. And I look, I'm like, here he comes. And I move to get a shot because there's some trees in front of me. And he did not come down either of the trails. He came down straight at us. And he pops out of this brush 35 yards from me, facing me. And as soon as he pops out, as soon as I can see the top of his head, I come to full draw. With a brown bear, I don't want to be in a position where he walks into 20 yards, sees me come to full draw, and then I shoot him, because that's a situation where he could charge and he's going to get a bullet. And I don't want him to get a bullet for obviously all the reasons bow hunters don't want their animals to get a bullet. So, because it's no longer a bow kill, right? And so I come to full draw ASAP. He stops, and I thought he was looking at me. The video reveals later that he wasn't looking at me, but I had him at 35 yards directly facing me, and I felt very confident in the shot, and I punched him right through the front of his chest. The arrow went the length of him, exited behind his ribs, never found the arrow, blew right through him. People talk about these heavy arrows, such BS. 410 grain arrow, 17% FOC, went the length of a brown bear, blew out the other side. We couldn't even find it. So, and it was amazing, Dylan. Amazing. Everything about it was amazing. We walked up to the bear, We quickly realized that for some reason this bear had white claws, and he wasn't a 15 to 17-year-old bear. He was more like a 12-year-old bear, and he wasn't what we were looking for. But I'm telling you right now, it was one of the biggest thrills of my life to hunt that bear. And I would never in a million years walk up to an animal that wasn't as big as I thought he was and choose to be disrespectful to the animal and the experience. And my guides and myself and everybody else for all the work that we put in. To me, it was incredible. I was grateful. I was thankful. I was through the roof excited. And I still am. I loved that hunt. I loved everything about it. The only thing I'm bummed about is Alaska makes me wait 4 years to go back. That's it. That's my only bum. But other than that, dude, it was awesome. So hopefully my story didn't get too long there, buddy. But I just wanted to like create.
Oh, absolutely, man.
What happened?
You posted that kill shot not too long ago, didn't you?
Yeah. Let's see. I killed him in May.
I thought I saw it on your social media.
Yeah.
You shooting the bear. Yeah.
Yep. No. Oh, you mean the video?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. No, because I'm working with Kuyu to put a video together on that. So
okay. I must be.
It will be launched.
It's funny because the exact story that you told, I saw somebody. I don't remember who it was.
Well, I might have. I posted the kill photo, and I wrote about the story.
Okay, maybe that's it. I don't
know.
It's funny how hearing you talk about quality animals and any animal with a bow is a quality animal. But this year I'm hunting with a recurve, and I promise you, if a forking horn comes in, it's getting an arrow. Like
it's a totally different thing.
I told my wife, I'm not big on. I say I'm not big on it. I don't spend much on taxidermy compared to other people. Usually if it's a whitetail, it's just a European mount. Now the bear I shot in Maine last year, I got a 3/4 mount on it. But I told my wife, I'm like, sweetheart, I don't care if it's a stinging 120-inch deer. If I kill a deer with my recurve, it's going shoulder mount on the wall. I'm going to put a plaque saying first recurve kill.
Yeah.
It's just a different ball game, man. It really is. And you hear people talk about it and you're like, I can hit a target at 20 yards with a recurve. No problem. It's okay. But then once you start doing it, man, you realize like, gosh, this is a different game. It's harder. It's just a different hunt. I mean,
are you shooting instinctive, Dylan?
Yes and no. I am instinctively gap shooting.
Okay.
So I do gap shoot. I know my point on is 35 yards, but at the same time, I don't range find, and I don't, like if you watch Aaron Schneider, he's got laid out, 20 yards, 6 inches under, 42 yards, 5 inches over. I don't watch Aaron Schneider, so I wouldn't know. I don't gap shoot to that extent. I know my point on, and then everything else inside of that is instinctive. Okay. So basically, I tell myself, I'm like, I need to. So you gap shoot at one distance? Is that what you're saying? No, I gap shoot at all distances, but I just instinctively gap shoot. If that makes sense, I don't range and say, okay, I'm at 20 yards. Oh, you're not ranging the animal then. Right. And I don't. I see. Okay. I don't think in my head I need to hold 6 inches under. I just, in relation to the 3D target, I just hold where I need to hold, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which, because I told myself I don't want to be a gap shooter because I like the simplicity of just shooting the bow. I like the simplicity of pull back and shoot. And as an athlete growing up, that's what made the most sense to me. If you throw a baseball or shoot a basketball, kick a football, you don't think to yourself, I need to put this much angle on it or whatever. You just do it. And so that was what made the most sense in my head. I quickly realized I suck at that with a bow. And so started gap shooting, figured out what my point on was, and then from there I just kind of instinctively gap shoot. So interesting. That's a long answer to a short question, but yeah, I mean, gap shooting to me, like I own a recurve and I shoot it in the backyard for fun occasionally. I've never hunted with it. I would someday like to shoot a doe or something. I think it would just be a really exciting thing. But I would never, ever like put the majority of my hunting. I'm just like, my goals are too high really with what I want to, the stuff I want to kill. I don't think I could do it with a recurve, honestly. I don't know. I mean, it just makes it that much harder. But to me, gap shooting is almost like, why not use a pin?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just naive, so I shouldn't talk about it, but it just, like, if you're gonna use something to aim with, like a recurve, like when I shoot my recurve, I mean, I'm probably not very good at it, but I'm shooting instinctive. Like, I want to feel that rush. I
Yeah.
want to feel that rush of like, I feel it. Where's it gonna go? I feel it. Where's it gonna go? It's cool. I think that's it. I don't know. It's all cool, but I mean, I have a buddy. You guys, I mean, you probably know Tim Gillingham.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine, and he has different length arrows
Mm-hmm.
for different yardages,
You know,
so that his gap will work. So like at 40 yards, he has these really, I think it's really long arrows for 40 yards so that he can get the point to work. I'm like, dude, just shoot your compound. What are you doing?
what's funny is I mentioned Aaron Snyder, and he talked about gap shooting, and Tim commented on his post and said, if you're gonna gap shoot, why not just use a sight? And Aaron just said, "Shut up, Tim." No,
That is funny.
I do, and Tim actually, um, when I dove into shooting a recurve, he was the guy that helped me figure out arrow setup. So,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
just weights and links, and because that's the biggest difference for me is it really becomes an art. With a compound, and I can't speak to you about this because you do this for your compound, but most guys roll into a bow shop, hand them their compound, they cut their arrows to length, they shoot bullet holes, they move on. With a recurve, you've really got to tune that arrow to that bow, and you've really got to test links and different weights, and you really have to tune that arrow to that bow. And so that's really what I like about it, is getting back to kind of the art of archery, and rather than just set it up and shoot it. You know what I mean?
Everything about shooting a recurve, and especially instinctively, is very artistic.
Yeah.
And everything, I think I would call everything about tuning a compound, at least the way I do it, it's more like witchcraft than science.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, man, those things are.
What's funny though is Jim Willems. He told me a story one time, and he was going on this hunt, and actually, the story you told about that bear. The hunt he went on, the bear ended up charging him after he shot it, and they had to finish it with a gun. Couldn't make Pope and Young because of it, so on and so forth. But he talked about how, weeks leading up to that hunt, he hurt his shoulder and he couldn't pull back his recurve. He's like, and I had to take a compound, and I was not prepared. He's like, that made me feel like I wasn't ready. He's like, because for me, a recurve is easier to hunt with. Like when I want a challenge, I grab my compound, and I was just like, wow, like I hope I'm to that point someday, but I'm not right now.
Yeah, I think that a really good recurve shooter has an advantage over compounds. The speed that they can draw and execute a shot, and if I'm in a whitetail stand, I've thought about it many times. Like for me to haul back that 70-pound bow, and then get it lined up, center my peep, get the pin on, and and it kind of makes a big commotion in the stand, that whole process. Frankly, I can't draw my 70-pound bow without sort of like making body movement. I can't like be aimed right at the deer and keep my posture and slowly pull the bow back to anchor, get on target and everything without making a bit of a commotion. But if I were shooting my recurve, I could have the posture and everything lined up for that, where the shooting lane is going to be, and I could draw the bow to anchor, quickly aim and shoot. I think, but I'm not good enough to trust myself in that situation.
Yeah.
But I just could see where somebody would prefer that. Now, if we're talking 45 yards, I mean, there's no question my compound has the advantage. But in certain situations, I can see where a recurve would be easier to hunt with if you're good. There aren't, a lot of people in the world that are really, really, really good with a recurve.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an art, and I admire the guys I have a buddy who literally used to be able to hit a quarter every time at 20 yards. It instinctively, it was the most incredible thing I ever saw. But anyway, yeah. What were you going to say?
Speaking of distances, what is your preferred? I say preferred. What's your effective range?
Well, it's so much of that varies on conditions and the animal I'm shooting at. I really like. Now, for some reason, whitetail hunting, it's less, and I don't know why that is. I feel when I'm in the hardwoods and I'm sitting in a tree stand and I look at all these shooting lanes and I see how fast everything happens and the wariness of the animal and all this different stuff, I feel my effective range shrink. And I compare that to a caribou standing in the tundra, just looking at me, like, duh. Like and I know there's no way in a million years this thing's going to jump the string, and it's this giant target out there with this huge kill zone. It is very, very different. But I really, for most Western game hunting, if I could pick a yardage to have an animal stop broadside, it'd be 50 yards. No closer, no farther. And you may ask, why not any closer? And the reason is because things get crazy under 50 yards. Obviously 45 yards is still pretty nice buffer, but you put that animal at 15 yards and you draw on a mule deer at 15 yards, good luck. Yeah. Right? You flinch, you have to move just a little bit, anything at all at 15 yards, and it's game over. You're not getting that shot off. I would much rather that mule deer be at 50 yards. And if he sees me draw, he's like, what's that? I'm outside of that mountain lion jump zone, right? Because that's how they're genetically tuned. They're not too worried about something that's 50 yards away. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility. And I still feel like I'm extremely accurate at 50 yards. Knock on wood, right? Because you never want to say this. As soon as you say this, you miss a shot. But I feel like I can hit the lungs every time at 50 yards, right? So that's my preferred range. Now, for some reason on a whitetail, I don't feel that same thing. For some reason, I'm not hoping, I hope I get a 50-yard shot on this whitetail today. I don't know why that is, man. It's just some kind of instinct in me where I feel like I want it closer. I feel like I want the 20-yard shot on the whitetail. And maybe it's because I'm in the tree stand and there's other ways to make sure that I can draw and get ready to shoot. And then I'd rather have that close shot. But when I'm on the ground, I don't want to be 20 yards. And that's true. If I were sitting next to a tree and a whitetail walked by, I would not want to be at 20 yards. So I guess the same thing would be true. Maybe that's part of it. You like put the whole equation together, and because I'm in a tree stand or a blind, the 20-yard shot's preferred. But when I'm out in the open stalking, I don't want that shot.
Right. No, and I've had deer duck my arrow at 10 yards, and I'm like, how in the world did you duck my arrow in 0.004 seconds? Like, how is that even possible?
Seriously.
But no, and I think it goes back to because I shoot the best at 40 yards. Okay. Not closer, not further. And I had this conversation with somebody, and they're like, well, if you think about it, if you're shooting at 20, you're having to hold down, but if you're shooting at 40, you're like perfectly aligned, and it just becomes easier. And then also, if you're trying to shoot closer, your eyes if you're shooting at 20, my eyes can focus on the pin and the target. But if you get out to 40, 50 yards, it forces you to just focus on the target and look through your pin, and you're no longer trying to focus on both of them at once. And so I think I think that's why I shoot best at 40 yards, because that's just where everything aligns with me, and I'm holding perfectly level.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing for sure, and that's it's really, really beneficial to shoot far in your practice. I have a range behind my house. I shoot out to 120 yards, and it tunes you. It really makes you learn to improve your form and your focus, your ability to pick a spot, all of that. And I don't shoot at dots either. I shoot I actually use, just forgot the name of it, solo target. I use solo target, which they have no marks on them. There's no insert to shoot at, like on a 3D target, at least under 50 yards, all you can see is that insert. You're shooting at a circle, And so, but I shoot out to 120. My favorite yardage to shoot at in my backyard is 101 yards. I shoot at 101 yards all the time, and I can stack them in the kill zone at 101 yards because I do it all the time. I don't know. I just picked it.
Just to get
about 100, and I thought, 101 sounds better. Yeah, I was doing this thing too. I was bow hunting 101. I was doing a little bit, which interestingly, isn't that the name of your podcast?
Hunting 101. Yep.
Hunting 101. Yeah, I did this thing I branded for a little while, bow hunting 101 on my social, and I was doing this challenge where you shoot 101 arrows starting at 1 yard. You shoot an arrow, then 2, then 3. You keep taking a step back, and if you can shoot 101 arrows in a row into the kill zone, out to 101 yards, you kind of like pass this bow hunting 101 challenge. I only tried it a handful of times. I made it to 93 yards a couple times and then missed by an inch. But anyway, yeah, I like shooting far.
So I just had to. You said these solo targets, and I've never seen them, so I had to Google them. Are these a skin that you put on a target?
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not an actual target.
Yeah, you put it like on a block or a Reinhardt, anything you want to put it on, you put it on there, but it is the most realistic thing.
Oh,
the first time you shoot at one, it'll literally give you buck fever. No joke, bro.
Absolutely. I'm looking.
They are awesome. It's like HD printing, like you can see every hair.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And they are perfectly anatomically correct size. Like the chest depth of the whitetail is 17 inches, and that's what a whitetail buck is. He's 17 inches. The mule deer is like 19 inches. The sheep's 20 inches. The caribou's 24 inches. I mean, they are perfectly correct.
So you've got to have a pretty big target to put them on.
No, but it just if you're accurate, you put it in the middle of vitals. I mean,
No. I'm the skin. You have to have a pretty big target to put the skin on.
No, you don't.
Oh,
there's a stand. So they have an adjustable stand that you put your target on, and you adjust that to the right height, and then you center the vitals with your target as the background. Now, if you're gonna miss, let's say you have a 16-inch target, it would work for it. But if you can't hit a 16-inch target at 80 yards, then you probably shouldn't shoot at that target at 80 yards.
I got you. Very cool. You learn something new every day. Go check out solo targets, guys. They look pretty sweet.
They were having a few delays in shipping. One of it's a small company, and one of the partners passed away, and so the other partner was trying to get the business rolling again. And he told me that August was his goal to have it up again, which is right now. So I think it's shipping again, but you might have to be patient with them. But they are going to be shipping again.
How long does a skin last?
Quite a while. I mean, you eventually do get to the point where you can start to see, if you have a black target behind it, you start to see like a black area. If you're shooting, like if I'm shooting from 101 yards, though, I'm not going to drill out like a 2-inch black circle in the middle of the target, right? But if you're shooting at 20 yards, you might wear that thing out fairly quickly.
Man, I got to order my kids this kid's turkey. They'd love that.
Dude, I'll tell you, man, those targets were literally a game changer for my hunting accuracy, because it made, like, shooting at dots is not good for hunting. I'm telling you, it is not good. That buck steps out there and you have no idea how to aim at it and kill it. And even a 3D target, when you're shooting at that insert, because that's all you're going to see is the circle of that insert, and you're going to see lines and all these different things on it that just don't exist on the real animal, and you're going to cheat. Your mind will cheat because it wants to cheat, So you take away all that possibility with a target like this, and you're shooting at hair. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. No, Harv Ebers, Harv was my recurve coach. So Harv drove to Missouri to his house in Missouri one day and spent the afternoon, and he taught me how to shoot a recurve.
Nice.
And he took me out back, and he's like, I never shoot at targets ever. And all he had was hay bales. And he's like, what that forces me to do is pick a spot on the hay. Like I don't have a spot. I don't have and of course he's a old school guy. And so that's how they used to practice, he doesn't have 3D targets and stuff, but he's like,
what my license plate says? License plate? PKASPOT. Pick a spot.
Nice.
That's my license plate.
I love it.
It's all that matters in life, Dylan, is your ability to pick a spot.
Yeah. Now, when I'm shooting a recurve, my ability to hit the spot is all that matters.
Well, sure.
I'm anxious to hear you talk about this because I stumbled upon your affection for the product at convention. I'm a huge fan of Koa optics, have been for a long time. Again, kind of stumbled on them by accident. S&S Archery was having a sale on them, and I was going on a hunt with the guys from S&S, and I'm like, man, I need a spotting scope. And they're like, well, you can just use this one while we're there. And I'm like, sounds good. Ended up using it and buying it at the end of the weekend because I'm like, I need this in my life. So I'm a huge fan of Koa optics, and you run their 55, correct?
Yeah, that is an unbelievable piece of engineering.
Now, even outside of Koa, because I know you kind of have a spotting scope system. Tell me when and how you choose what spotting scopes, what sizes, what how do you run through all that in your mind?
Yeah, so I have a Swaro 95, which, I mean, it is a beast to carry, and it's an incredible optic. If I'm doing a hunt where I really need to see detail, and ironically, one of those hunts is Sitka black-tailed deer, because when you're trying to see if something's 108 inches and not 107, I mean, and it literally comes down to a game of half inches with Sitka black-tailed deer. Like, is that G2 7 inches or 8 inches?
Yeah.
I need to know. And the country's really big, and so you're looking sometimes like, a few miles away, and you have to like cross a huge valley to get a closer look. So believe it or not, even though that is a brutal backpacking hunt in Southeast Alaska, some of the toughest country you'll ever hunt, I take my Swaro 95, and I know that's crazy, but it's just one of those rare circumstances where I need that extra. But on this sheep caribou hunt I just went on to the Yukon, somebody might think, well, on a sheep you need that big optic. No, I took my Kawa 55. That's what I took. I also have a Leica. I use Leica binos, rangefinder, and spotter. I have the Leica right in the middle, and that one gets used a lot too. And it's a beautiful piece of optics. There's so many good choices out there right now. I do feel like Kowa has a very interesting niche with their 55. There is nothing like it on the market. I have not found another weight and size comparable optic that has the type of clarity that it has. It's
like the size of a water
incredible.
bottle, if you've never seen it.
It's unbelievable.
Crazy.
Yeah, everybody should own one. I mean, it's incredible. That is such a nice little optic. I love carrying that thing. It's like when I carry a backup rifle, I carry a tiny little 18-inch barrel 338-06 that weighs 5 pounds. And I just love carrying it because it's so, when I'm guiding, and I need a rifle, I love carrying this tiny little light rifle. I feel the same way about my my Kawa 55 with a tiny little carbon fiber tripod and my whole package. I mean, the whole package is probably 3.5 pounds. Yeah. Like it's crazy for a spotter and a tripod to get in that range.
No, it is. And that's the one that I used when I was on that hunt with SNS. And I'm like, this little dinky thing, and it had just come out, and so I'd never even heard or seen of it. I'm like, this little thing, and they're like, just trust me. And I'm like, whatever, dude. And I used it all week on that hunt, and I'm like, God, I gotta have this in my life. This is phenomenal.
Every guide I've ever shown it to has been blown away.
It's great, man.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I like to ask all my guests, and I'm super anxious to ask you this, because I feel like you, maybe more than anybody else, have a ton of little bitty tips and tricks and pieces of advice. So Fred Bear was big on his field notes. So I always ask people, what's one field note you've taken from the field that I can take and make myself a better hunter with? Just a tip or trick that you've learned over the years.
Field notes. That's interesting. My phone is full of field notes. When I'm hunting and I think of something, I immediately write it down. I would say do everything you can when you're stalking, that is. Do everything you can to see them before they see you. Now, I know that may sound obvious, but so what happens when the animal sees you first is it becomes a very explosive situation, and you're trying to range, knock, draw in seconds. And it sometimes it works out okay. Sometimes they pause for long enough for you to get the shot off. But a lot of times you miss, they jump, they whatever. I mean, I call it the rodeo. I always say avoid the rodeo. And the rodeo, I define it as when they see you before you see them, or at the same time, or whatever. And so those last few whatever minutes of the stalk, or that last 50 yards as you get into the zone where you could potentially see them, literally take one step, stop, look, and listen for 30 seconds. Then another step, stop, look, and listen. And you're likely, if you do that, you're very likely to see them before they see you. And it takes a lot of patience. And you may think, oh, but what if he's gone or whatever? Well, I'd rather have him be gone and not know I was ever there and have an opportunity maybe at him again later than to have the rodeo start where we see each other at the same time, and I'm trying to knock and shoot, and usually what happens is I rush my shot. I don't make a good shot. He runs before it, because you're like under such pressure in that situation. So I know that may sound obvious, but I don't think in practice that it's actually happening as much as it should.
Yeah, I saw a quote one time, and I kind of took it a bit further, but somebody basically said, "You think you're going slow, but your slow's not slow enough." And that was the whole essence of it, is like when you think you're hunting slow, slow down even more.
Yep.
And so I like that rule of 1 step 30 seconds, 1 step 30 seconds. What else do you got coming up this fall?
Well, I'm antelope hunting in Utah sometime in September. Don't have exact dates yet, but that'll be pretty fun. I like hunting in my home state when I can. I mentioned I don't hunt that much in Utah. It's true. It's hard to get tags. It's hard to get good tags, but I did get an antelope tag, so that will be really great. I hunted bison last year in Utah, and that was amazing. So, yeah, so I've got antelope, and then I have whitetail, and then I have that Doll sheep hunt in the Yukon the last 10 days of October, which is a gnarly time to be backpacking.
Yeah.
The last 10 days of October in the Yukon, I'm telling you right now, bro, like you're not going to get your tent stakes in the ground. I'll tell you that. It is everything is frozen solid. I mean, we like 0 degrees Fahrenheit and wind, and you can have some beautiful sunny days too, but it is cold, really cold. And we're going that time of year just because it's a very unique time to see sheep that may just never be seen in the normal season. It still is the normal season. That's the last 10 days of the season. It's just nobody hunts them that time of the year. Everybody wants to hunt them in August when it's beautiful. Of course, that's when I want to hunt them too. It's a great time to be in the mountains, but maybe, just maybe, I'll find that monster I've been chasing in late October.
I hope so, man. I hope so. Now, where can they find you at social media wise?
Just Allen Bolen, ALlenBolen on Instagram.
Yes, I would just encourage you, go follow Allen. He's one of my favorite pages because he's constantly putting out information and tips and tricks where I'm just like, oh, there you go. Which is what I strive to do with our field notes. And if you're not aware of that, we actually take our field notes that our guests share with us, and then I put them out in video form, sharing that field note. So go check out Bear Archery's YouTube or my personal social medias where those field notes are put out. And I talk about shot practice a lot, Alan, and so I'm gonna have to get me one of those. What'd you call it? Solo targets. I'm gonna have to get one of those solo targets and do a tip on practicing with those, man.
Yeah, it's they're I would say it's one of the biggest game changers I've done to my bow hunting in the last 10 years. Started to use those, and it's a cool small company. Like they don't. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. It's too small of a company. The guy who owns it has mountain goat hunted with my outfit in BC a couple of times, and he's just a really nice guy. And he showed me these targets. I'm like, are you kidding me? I have been looking for something like this forever, and I just started using them. So I have no incentive to like talk about them other than I just love the product. Absolutely love the product.
No, I can see why, man. And the biggest problem I have with 3D targets is, I've got a whole 3D range in my backyard. I've got 7 3D targets set up. I can walk out and shoot them at any time. But the biggest problem I have with those is, man, they wear down so fast, and but I feel like with these solo targets, you can have one block target, and then every day you could just put a different animal in front of it and shoot a different animal. And so I really like the concept, man. I'm going to have to give him a shot.
Yeah, I just pulled out my Antelope solo target. It doesn't have an arrow through it. I've never shot at it before because it's been sitting in my shop for 2 years. I ordered one, and I'm so excited to put the first arrow through it. It's the most realistic looking antelope target you've ever seen in your life. I just can't wait to shoot at it.
I'm looking at these, man, and they are crazy real.
Yeah.
And
they had a thing going for a while where you could send them a trail camera picture and they would print you your buck and you could shoot at your buck all season. How cool. I don't know if they're still doing that, with their staffing issues and all of that, but that was a pretty cool idea too.
Very cool idea, man. Super cool concept. Before we go, I need to give one more thank you to my friends over at Boning. They make all of the arrow components to build all the arrows in the world, whether shooting traditional, compound, whatever you're shooting. They have arrow components. They also have some incredibly cool Fred Bear branded products. So Fred Bear branded wraps and vanes. So go check out Boning. What kind of vane system do you run, Allen?
I'm shooting a 4-fletch 1 3/4 inch. Pretty low profile. It's about the smallest vane that you could possibly use and get a broadhead to fly. I'm shooting 4 of them because I would have to shoot a slightly larger vane if I only shot 3. And the reason I like low profile is better crosswind performance. So I'd rather shoot 4 of the smallest vanes I can possibly get to work than 3 slightly larger vanes because it wouldn't perform as well in the crosswind.
Yeah, very cool, man. Guys, go check out Allen Bolen. I am incredibly thankful for you coming on, Allen. I appreciate it.
It's been fun, Dylan. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it as well.
Absolutely. You guys have a great week, and thanks for listening.